They told you to be kind. They told you to be honest. They told you trust is everything. And yet behind closed doors, behind courtly smiles and friendly nods, something else always happens. Something older, quieter, and far more effective. Machiavelli called it truth. Not the pretty truth, not the moral truth you unroll on holidays. The brutal truth: people are instruments of their interests. Appearances are tools. Sympathy is a currency to be spent. This will change how you see everyone. When you learn to read people the Machiavellian way, you stop being surprised by betrayal. You stop mistaking warmth for loyalty or charm for conviction. You begin to see patterns where you once saw personalities, incentives, fears, vanity, and appetite. You begin to measure the gap between what people show you and what they will do when it matters. This is not cynicism for its own sake. It is a lens, sharp, cold, honest, that lets you navigate a world that rewards those who understand motives, not morals. Machiavelli's central lesson is both simple and terrifying. When stakes rise, virtue often falters. People are comfortable being benevolent when there is nothing to lose. Ask for their hand when the wind blows, and they will gladly clasp it. But ask them to walk into the storm with you, to give up comfort, status, or advantage, and then you will see their true calculus. They weigh loss against benefit, comfort against principle, and the ledger decides their choice. That is the brutal truth. So what does that mean for you? It means relationships are not always what they appear. Families, friendships, and alliances are often structured around mutual advantage. That the father who adores you today becomes the critic tomorrow when your success threatens his pride. That the friend who laughs with you over beers may not be the one who takes your call when your back is against the wall. That people who preach loyalty often measure it not by conviction, but by convenience. But before you recoil, hear this. Understanding this doesn't make you cruel. It makes you prepared. Preparation is the only humane alternative to blindsided shock. Machiavelli didn't celebrate treachery. He advised rulers to expect human nature as it is, so they could protect those they lead. Apply this locally. If you run a team, lead with clarity about incentives. If you love someone, notice where their boundaries lie. If you build influence, don't confuse applause with allegiance. There is a second element in this brutal truth. Image is action's twin. People construct appearances because appearances influence others' behavior. We perform character in order to achieve effects. A leader wears decisiveness because decisiveness creates order. A lover feigns humility because humility breeds trust. A colleague inflates compassion because compassion unlocks favors. When you stop confusing the mask with the face, you free yourself to read performance intentionally. You start asking, what does this mask want me to believe, and why? Machiavelli also teaches that fear is more reliable than love when it comes to governance. Why? Because love, being a feeling, is fragile and fickle. Fear is a cause and effect chain. If someone fears the consequences of betraying you, they are more predictable. Now slow down. This is not an instruction to terrify everyone in your orbit. It's a law of leverage. The lesson is about creating stakes and rules, not cruelty. Set boundaries with consequences. When people see your boundaries enforced consistently, behavior becomes understandable, not capricious. Let's bring this closer to everyday life. Think of the workplace. Teams flourish when incentives align. If promotions reward visibility rather than competence, watch as talent migrates to performance art. If leaders reward loyalty to themselves rather than loyalty to the mission, allegiance becomes personal, tribal, and transactional. The Machiavellian lens makes obvious what common sense obscures. Roles, rewards, and rules shape conduct far more than platitudes or pep talks. Now the darker corners, deception and manipulation. These words sound ugly, and they should. But Machiavelli knew that deception exists whether or not you endorse it. People will use it to protect themselves, to advance, or to survive. Recognizing this means two things. First, it means not being naively transparent where transparency can be exploited. Second, it means learning to see the signs of strategic misdirection. A story told too perfectly, outrage offered theatrical timing, Promises that rise and vanish with convenience. When you read these as moves rather than meanings, you regain power. Here's where nuance matters. Not every compromise is betrayal. Not every calculated choice erases character. Humans are adaptive creatures faced with competing duties. To self, to family, to reputation, to principle. The Machiavellian method is a diagnostic device, not a moral verdict. It tells you how choices are likely to be made, not whether they are just. You still get to choose your standards. But once you apply this lens, you can choose with your eyes open. Another Machiavellian revelation is the role of narrative. People will craft their life stories to make sense of their actions, to themselves and others. Narrative is a soft power. It directs sympathy, shapes blame, and rationalizes behavior. When someone tells you their version of events, listen to both the content and the structure. Who is the hero? Who is the villain? Who benefits? Narratives often conceal incentives. When you decode them, you see where loyalties might bend. The next truth, power is not always about domination. Sometimes it's about indispensability. People don't only seek control, they seek positions that make them needed. Want influence? Make yourself scarce by being uniquely competent, reliable, or connected. Create dependencies without coercion. Be the one who understands the numbers, the story, or the network. Machiavelli prized the ruler who could appear both magnanimous and formidable, someone whose value made opposition costly and whose generosity made gratitude profitable. You'll notice a recurring theme: consistency. People respect predictable leaders, not because they admire their personality, but because predictability reduces risk. Show that your decisions follow a logic, that rewards, consequences, and expectations are consistent, and you build a social economy around your rules. Consistency is the antidote to manipulative chaos. It allows trust to be functional even in a world that often serves self-interest. And then there's reputation, the brittle currency of social life. Reputation multiplies your power because it makes others act even when you're not there. A harsh reputation can deter wrongs. A generous reputation can attract allies. Guard it. Cultivate it by aligning word and deed. But be mindful. Reputation, like myth, can be created by performance and destroyed by a single real choice. Machiavelli knew reputations were tools to be managed. Use them thoughtfully. Let's talk about love and intimacy, because people often expect Machiavellian analysis to apply only to kings in business suits. Love is not exempt. Most love stories are an exchange. Affection for attention, security for sacrifice, admiration for novelty. Machiavelli reminds us to notice how these exchanges are balanced. If you feel drained, notice the ledgers. Is the other person investing as much as they extract? Are promises backed by actions? Love that survives storms is often structured by mutual costs. The willingness to bear pain, to give up convenience for another's good. Where that willingness is one-sided, the relationship risks becoming a transaction dressed as devotion. You might now fear becoming cold, calculating, distance from the warmth that makes life worth living. Don't. The point is not to replace empathy with algorithms, it is to augment your empathy with clarity. When you know the forces that move people, you can love better. By choosing partners who are capable of sacrifice, by cultivating friends who reward reciprocity, by naming expectations clearly so they can be met. Machiavelli's lens lets you be loving on purpose. What about manipulation from others? You will encounter flattering smiles that want your signature, apologies that arrive when consequences loom, and fury that appears when benefits vanish. The Machiavellian toolkit equips you with questions to cut through the fog. Who benefits from this behavior? What does this person risk if they act differently? What structure of incentives produce this decision? These questions are surgical. They don't make you paranoid, they make you precise. There's one last brutal truth Machiavelli whispers. Power is rarely neutral. The structures we accept, institutions, markets, hierarchies, reward certain types of behavior. You are shaped by that architecture as much as you shape it. So if you want to change how people act, change the incentives. That is the real secret of politics and influence. Change the payoff, and the behavior follows. Leaders who understand incentives can turn self-interest into public good. That is not wickedness, it's practical engineering. So how do you act with this truth in your pocket? First, observe more than you assume. Measure actions more than promises. Second, create systems, rules and consequences that make desired behavior simple and predictable. Third, invest in reputation and indispensability. Be the person others prefer to keep around. Fourth, maintain clear boundaries. Enforce them softly but consistently. Fifth, choose allies who prove themselves under stress, not those who only appear in comfortable rooms. And finally, keep your humanity. Machiavelli's truth is brutal because it refuses romantic illusions. But it does not tell you to become small. It tells you to be wise. The cruelest people are those who pretend the world is always fair and then are stunned when it isn't. The wisest people accept the world's hardness and decide consciously how they will act within it. If you accept this perspective, your world will change. You'll see the ritual of kindness, the performance of loyalty, the strategic pause before a promise. You'll notice the ledger, the incentive, the narrative, and with that sight, you'll navigate with less shock and more agency. That is not despair, it is preparation. Machiavelli didn't write to teach wickedness. He wrote to give rulers a sober map of human behavior so they might govern better. Take that map and use it in your life. Not to dominate others, but to protect what matters, to set rules that reward the good, and to build circles that are reliable when the weather turns. Understand the brutal truth. People will often act from interest, not principle. Learn its grammar, then decide how you will live. Because once you see the world this way, you can't unsee it. And that's not the end of the story. It's the start of the work. To act clearly in a murky world, to love with eyes open, to lead with both firmness and compassion, and to design systems that make better choices the easiest choices. That, perhaps, would have made Machiavelli smile. You thought you knew people. You thought loyalty was permanent, friendship unbreakable, and love immune to the storms of time. But when you look closer, when you remove the painted surface, you find something that shakes you to your core. People move according to necessity, not sentiment. This is the Machiavellian brutal truth no one wants to accept, that behind every smile, behind every oath, behind every promise lies a silent calculation. Machiavelli warned that men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. Harsh words, but look around. Have you not seen it yourself? The friend who disappears when you have nothing to offer. The ally who turns into a rival when the throne is near. The lover who swears eternity, but slips away when the cost grows too heavy. We want to believe in purity, but human beings are merchants of advantage, trading loyalty for gain, love for comfort, morality for survival. This is why the wise man never builds his life upon fragile illusions. He builds on structures of necessity. He knows that fear and respect bind deeper than affection, that systems and boundaries outlast words of love, that trust must be tested, not assumed, and when betrayal comes, he is never shocked. For he knew from the beginning that betrayal was always possible. But here lies the paradox. When you see through people, when you accept the brutal truth, you do not grow colder, you grow freer. You no longer waste years chasing false loyalty. You no longer collapse in despair when masks fall. Instead, you stand firm, eyes open, choosing carefully where to invest your energy. You learn that not all allies are friends, and not all friends are allies. You learn to value action over speech, endurance over sentiment. Machiavelli tells us, people admire boldness. They follow strength, not weakness. They respect the one who enforces his will, not the one who drowns in tears of betrayal. When you carry yourself with authority, when you show that you cannot be swayed by flattery, nor destroyed by rejection, the world bends differently around you. Those who would betray think twice, and those who would use you find themselves powerless. This lens transforms how you see everyone. The teacher, the priest, the politician, the parent, all perform roles, all wear masks. None of this makes them evil. It makes them human. But when you understand the mask, when you read the role for what it is, you stop being a puppet in their play. You begin to write your own script. And that is the beginning of true power. The brutal truth is not meant to strip away your humanity. It is meant to give you armor. Armor against disappointment, armor against naivety, armor against the manipulations that rule so much of life. With this armor, you can move strategically. You can give kindness where it will flourish and hold back where it will be wasted. You can reward loyalty when it costs someone something and dismiss the empty words of those who only offer what is easy. In the end, everyone seeks advantage. Everyone measures benefit against cost. But here is your edge. While they are unconscious slaves to this law, you are aware of it. You see it. You anticipate it. You plan for it. And awareness is power. Awareness means you are not blindsided, not broken, not deceived. You walk among the same people, but you are no longer of them. You are something rarer, a man who sees. At the end of it all, remember this. Machiavelli's brutal truth is not a curse, but a compass. It doesn't demand that you become ruthless or cold, only that you stop being blind. When you see people clearly, you stop expecting perfection from them, and you stop being shattered when they fail you. You learn to take people as they are, not as you wish them to be. This vision gives you freedom. Freedom from disappointment, freedom from false hopes, freedom from the illusions that weaken so many. And in that freedom, you gain strength. Strength to choose wisely, to lead firmly, and to protect yourself without apology. In a world where most are deceived by appearances, the one who sees through them holds true power. That is Machiavelli's gift to you. Clarity. Use it well.